Thanks, everybody. You can be seated. Oh, what a great morning. When I come to these, I drove in from Dalby last night. If you don't know where that is, it's like that. Anyway, it was out there. It was hot, and I come in. I woke up this morning. It's like somebody turned the air conditioner on. I was like, yes, we're back in Toowoomba. This is fantastic. I love these meetings. I love what you do, and I think we need to show one quick appreciation to the people who put all this together and cooked for us and all of this. I think we should give everybody a round of applause for that. So I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you this morning about freedom, because I want to talk to you about the heart of New Hope. If you're a guest and somebody brought you to have fun and eat and watch silly things and have a blast, I celebrate that. And you might be wondering, I wonder what these guys actually, if you cut through all of this, I wonder what's underneath all, what is that? And so if you're a guest and you're just seeking the things of God out and this thing, or you're just looking for a group of people to belong to, there's an interesting study that was just put out by the University of Stanford on long life. And what this huge study showed was that the number one predictor of long life is a reported inner deep-seated belief that you belong to a group of people bigger than yourself. And that was by the University of Stanford. She said that the presenter said, even if you do nothing but join a poker club, just the fact that you are belonging to something else. So what we're doing here is important. It's actually the biggest predictive variable that we're going to live longer than we think, is that we belong to a group of people that are mates. That are friends. And if you're wondering, even if you come to New Hope, you've been coming to New Hope for 10 years, I want to try to realign the heart and the vision of what Pastor Chris and the team here would want to put out. And I would say, if I was walking through Grand Central and somebody said, hey, have you ever heard of this place down there? I'm thinking about trying it out. What are they all about? Well, there's two ways I can answer that question. The first way would be to tell them what they would experience. So, okay, you'd get here and you'd have some fun, and there's going to be good food, and you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with friendly people, and they're going to play games, and you're going to laugh, and that's a description of what we do. But if the question underneath that question is what are they about? If I had to summarize what makes New Hope great, I would say this, is that New Hope is committed to journeying with you in the process, however long that might take, for you not to simply embrace your forgiveness, but for you to also embrace what it means to live a free life, to be free on the inside. Like, it's one thing to be forgiven, and I'm positive, I'm speaking for the leaders here, we would want every person to say yes to Jesus and embrace the forgiveness. But here's the thing about forgiveness. Forgiveness is almost entirely God's deal, right? Like, we really have nothing to do with that except for to not utterly reject his offer, right? So as long as we're not utterly rejecting his offer, all the work of forgiveness is God's deal. That's the theological word for it, if you need it, is redemption or forgiveness or justification. But the idea is that you've been made okay with God, that there's nothing between you and God. And we would hope that everybody embraces that. But we would also really hope, we would think it would be tragic if that's all we did is embrace that and then sit on our butt and wait to go to heaven when we die. In Jesus' day, the average age of death was 32. Right? So waiting to go to heaven when you died wasn't that big of a deal. It was like, okay, it's kind of like till death do us part meant something totally different, right? Till death do us part was like, put up with their crap for another 15 years, you'll die, it'll get better, right? Now we live to 84. And so if we're embracing whatever it means to be forgiven and okayness with God, and then our entire life is lived in bondage. And let me be clear, especially if you're new. If you're new and you're learning, I wonder what all this is about. And yes, we're laughing and I'm enjoying this, but I wonder what the story underneath this story is. I would simply say this, that you're sitting in a place and you're sitting amongst a group of people that aren't just committed to you being forgiven. That's actually almost none of our business. That's almost entirely between you and God. But what we are committed to is helping you journey to say yes to the infinite possibilities God has for your life and live free. There's a difference between redemption and reputation. Your redemption is entirely by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. Entirely. Like, that is God's work. But your reputation is determined by what you do. And you never, ever want to be a person who confuses redemption with reputation, right? Or you'll run the risk of being a forgiven person whose name means nothing, whose word means nothing, who lives. You don't want to be forgiven and in bondage to darkness, in bondage to things like lust, in bondage to things like I can't control my temper. We don't want to do that. We want to not just be forgiven, we want to be free. And so when I come in, this is I come in on the same week and have every year for the last 7 years, right? And this time of year is where the decisions we made January 1st to change our life this year, it starts to wear off. This is where gyms start to empty out. And look at yourself in the mirror. We need the gym, right? And so it's not like, well, that worked, and so here. No, it's just these things start to wear off. The commitments we made to spend money a little better or to invest a little better, that starts to wane. The commitments we made inside, I'm gonna treat my wife a bit differently, like to the better, or I'm gonna treat my wife worse. Don't make that decision, right? But we make these decisions around January 1st that we think, oh, you know what? If I stick to this, it'll change my life. And you're right. The problem is that most don't. And this is about the time where life throws you a little bit of a curveball. You get a little bit discouraged, and then we throw it out, and we start to waver. The car term for this would be we go out of alignment. Right? And so when our car goes out of alignment, it can create havoc on certain things. So I want to read a couple of scriptures to you. This is from the wisdom literature. So this is the section in the Bible that wise people were throwing out sayings and observations, and in general, this is how life works the best. This is from the book of Proverbs. If you could bring that first slide, it says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by duplicity." In the Proverbs, it's not overt sin that necessarily destroys you. It's not knowing where you're going. It's being double-minded. It's not knowing what to say yes to or what to say no to. It's I could go here or there. To the writer of Proverbs, this is what destroys somebody, is something that's double-minded. It's when we start rationalizing things outside of where we're meant to be going. Once again, the goal of this is not to be forgiven. This has nothing to do with forgiveness. This has everything to do with being free. If you maybe you've been resistant to come back to church because you went to church 15 years ago and you heard somebody read a passage like that, and even if he meant it or not, what you heard was, boy, you better make all the right decisions or God's going to get you. And you're thinking, I'm never going to make all the right decisions. I'm never going to do this. If my forgiveness is wrapped up in getting this thing all right, I quit. I am not doing that. And I want to be very clear about this. That is not the message of the gospel. The message of the gospel is that there is nothing between you and God, that God treats people how they're worth and never as they deserve. You might deserve ill treatment, but God treats you as you're worth and never as you deserve. This is not what we're not talking about the forgiveness part. We're talking about, do you actually want to live free? Now, let me show you this is another observation. Next slide from the wisdom literature. Here it comes. A prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. I love that. A wise person sees danger ahead and changes roads, but a foolish man keeps going, and in the end he'll suffer for it. In other words, it's always easier to just keep going. But a wise person makes small adjustments along the way. And it's a whole lot easier to make small micro adjustments a lot than to wait till you make one big adjustment. It's a whole lot easier to lose 5 kilos when you need to than to wait till you need to lose 50. It's a whole lot easier to pay off $1,500 in credit card debt than to wait till there's $15,000. Man, that is a whole lot easier. Freedom comes from being wise, and wisdom says make small micro adjustments along the way. Instead, when you see danger on the road ahead, change roads. Let me show you one more from the wisdom literature. This is Proverbs 14:8. The wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their ways, but the folly of fools is deception. If I could summarize my talk this morning in one sentence, it would be that. When's the last time you sat down and gave thought, not to your forgiveness, not to your faith, not to what you believe, but when's the last time we sat down and we gave true intentional thought to our ways, to the way I'm behaving today. Where does that road take me in a year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? And does that road get me to where I intend? If your intention and your ways are going the same place, even if it's destructive, well, at least you'll get what you want, right? But if you say you want this, but your ways are doing something else, you're going to be very frustrated with life, and that is bondage. It is not freedom. So I want to put, once again, I'm not saying anything that's not obvious. This is obvious. Even if some of that you were like, wow, that's profound. It's obvious. It's not arguable. No one would say, Shane, I disagree with you. We need to give less thought to our ways. Nobody. Nobody would say, you know what, we need to be less intentional and more just let life come. No. Nobody would say that. But the problem with obvious things is if we lack the language to put around it, it can be very frustrating into how we apply it. So I want to put some language around this. And as always, what I'll do is I'll put some language around it, and then I want to purposely formulate some questions that can be conversation starters for you and your friends to help realign us. So let's look at it this way. Next slide. So some observation about this. One, if our lives get out of alignment, it takes more energy to move less distance. Right? So if we're not moving, if all the systems aren't moving in tandem, it takes more energy to go less distance. And if our lives get out of alignment, it adds more wear and tear. Now, to fix this is an assumption Jesus made about his followers. Jesus assumes that people who follow him will be willing to have courageous conversations with each other. It's an assumption Jesus made. Jesus assumed that when we live together in community, that we would be open, we would see all people as our teacher. There are people that are smarter than you, and they should be your teacher. There are also people who aren't as educated as you, but we have a lot to learn from them as well. Jesus made an assumption that with strengths and weaknesses and metrons and circles of influence, that every person in your life has something to teach you. And Jesus assumed that his followers would live open to the feedback from other people, and that part of our redemptive story, part of our living free, is other people seeing our blind spots and being courageous enough to have a courageous conversation. Not an anonymous, faceless coward on Facebook complaining about something mindlessly. That is boring and awful. I'm talking about true, authentic relationships at Park House Cafe with a journal in front of you. Hey, how can we get better? Challenge my current God concept. Challenge my current way of thinking. Challenge the way you see me spending it. We're talking about people in relationship that have considered, if that person responds positively to what I say, am I willing to walk them through every step of that process? And the answer is yes. If you're not willing, listen, if you haven't even considered what you will do if they respond positively to your observation, then keep your mouth shut. This could be quite an open door to quite a big journey. And are we willing to do that? We pay enormous amounts of money for this in every area of our life. I love golf. If I was to tell you the amount of money I've spent on lessons trying to get better at golf, it would be embarrassing to me and to you, and you would watch me play golf and go, does the guy struggle walking from the car? You can't believe it. But my golf coach, you can't believe how bad I'd be without him, right? But my golf coach doesn't watch me and go, well, if that's what makes you feel better, just swing it like that. That's what you need to do. If you feel right in that position, I know the ball didn't get off the ground, but just keep going. Just keep going. No. A golf coach goes, you know what? I know what you're feeling there, but we got to change that feeling because that feeling is wrong. Look at the ball. The one thing in golf that tells the truth is the ball. Now, club makers will convince you that it's the club. They spend millions of dollars convincing you if you just bought this club, your horrendous swing would somehow produce a straight ball flight. Not true. Absolutely a lie. There's two things in golf that tell the truth, the ball and the ground, right? So the ball tells the truth, and if you look at the ground, you might feel like you're swinging straight down the line, but when the divot is really deep and going left, that club is coming the wrong direction. And so feedback tells us businesses spend millions of dollars every year on business coaches helping them realign their organizations. And if they're really good at it, it's very effective. We spend so much money getting feedback, paying for feedback from outside sources. Why on earth, when we live in community, would we honor living individually? It's not the best way to go. Does it have anything to do with forgiveness? No, it has everything to do with freedom. That part of being free is that there's somebody regularly speaking into your life and somebody you're speaking. Everybody is your teacher. Let's say it this way. Next slide. To be a person of influence, we have to make great decisions for a very long time. Great decisions. Influence is fragile. You'll never lose your forgiveness, but you can lose your influence pretty quickly. It's very, very fragile. You can lose your influence with your family very quickly. It's very, very fragile. You can lose your influence at your business very, very quickly. You can lose confidence with people very, very quickly. So to be a person of influence is really simple. In one sense, it's simple to explain, but very hard to pull off, and that is this. Being a person of influence is making very, very good decisions over a very, very long period of time, and that is impossible to do being a lone ranger and having no feedback from anybody else. It's assuming we have no blind spots. I get fascinated by leaders that are, I travel the whole world. I slept in my own bed 25 days all year. That's it. And every other night, I was somewhere doing this. And this is the easy part. The harder parts are the private meetings where people are telling you specific situations and, hey, speak into this, and your brain really has to go off the cuff and provide feedback. And it tickles me sometimes with leaders that are frustrated in leadership, and I just simply ask them one question. Tell me the last 3 books you read, and they look blank. Like, to not be a reader and expect to have anything to say, duh, right? Like, we need outside observations. Let's say it this way. You cannot gauge how you're doing from comparisons or plotted points. The worst, in terms of freedom, the worst way to gauge how am I doing is to look right and left, because you never know. Like this is something I've talked about here before, about being stuck in the land of bigger, better, richer, faster, fitter, right? The problem with that is for every richer there's a poorer, for every smarter there's a dumber, and so if you look right, you're going to feel inferior. If you look left, you're going to feel superior. Looking right and left is not a great gauge as to where you are. Neither is a plotted point. You cannot freeze the present and expect not to be discouraged or disillusioned or delusional about where you are. You might have a very good day and you go, well, I'm good from now on. You cannot freeze the present. You do not judge where you are based on a plotted point, but on a trajectory line. You got to ask, how am I doing compared to yesterday, a week ago? How is my marriage better or worse than 6 months ago, a year ago? Are we closer together, or is there more distance? How's that business going compared to a year ago? Where's the trajectory of my life going? We have to discipline ourselves to gauge where we are based on trajectory and never a plotted point. Let's say it this way. The goal is not simply to be forgiven, but to be free. I just thought I'd come back to that again. The goal is not, and I'm positive, if you're wondering, what are these people at New Hope about? Listen, the leadership of New Hope would hope with everything they are that you would say yes to Jesus and embrace the okayness with God that he offers. But that would just be the starting point. The leaders of New Hope would hope then that you would engage and plug in and begin a journey of not just being forgiven, but being the freest, best, peace person that you could possibly be, that you would fulfill all the infinite potentials for your life. Let's say if you're new to Jesus and you're like, I wonder this is what I think I heard Jesus was. And listen, let me make one statement about Jesus that I think is so important if you're new to him, and that is this. Next slide. Jesus never says, fix your life and come to me. Jesus says, bring your failure, your confusion, your darkness, and your shame to me. It's all part of your story. Jesus never says, learn how to behave and then come hang out. Jesus never says that. Jesus says, oh, you got doubts? Good. You got questions? Good. Oh, you've got some darkness? Good. As long as your shoulders are facing in the right direction, it doesn't matter if you're moving in micro steps. What Jesus doesn't want to see is you turn your back and completely reject the infinite possibilities God has for you. But if you're willing to journey, Jesus says, oh, that failure, bring it. Oh, that shame, bring it. Oh, don't hide it. No need. You know, look around. They all got it too. Ain't none of us worth a crap. Like, look. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. This is, hey, everybody here's got some failure that they hope nobody knows about. Everybody's got some shame. Everybody did something last week that they hope nobody finds out about. Everybody's got these secret doubts. Everybody's got some questions that they're a little bit embarrassed to ask. Everybody's got, hey, don't fix that and then come. Bring all of that to the table. All of that is welcome at my table. But here's the thing, right? When it comes to freedom, not forgiveness, when it comes to freedom comes down to making regular micro adjustments to your life. Regular feedback that says, hey, let's get this, let's do this. I don't want more wear and tear on my car, on my life than is necessary. Let's do this. So I've devised some questions that last year we talked about a life tune-up. So I rewrote it in a different way, and I want to talk about how to make these adjustments. I want to talk about some questions that we should be asking to realign ourselves. Let's look at some of these. So first, decisions. How are we doing with decisions? To be a person of influence requires making really good decisions over a really long period of time. So here's a couple of questions that I want to challenge the way we make decisions. Are we consumed with scrutinizing right versus wrong? If you don't hear anything else I say this morning, from here on out, listen to me now. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong is a horrendous filter for making decisions. If your only filter for making decisions is, well, is it right or wrong? You will destroy your life. To organize your life around the tree of knowledge of good and evil has not worked since Genesis chapter 3, and it won't work for you. You are not the exception to the rule, and here's why. A right versus wrong filter can lead us to rationalizing things that, although they're not wrong, eventually they will destroy us. Is there anything wrong with having lunch with that really pretty coworker? Like, is there anything wrong with having lunch with a friend? No, it's not wrong. Is it wise? No. But is it wrong? Not really. If you only consider right or wrong, it can lead us to rationalize. Is there anything wrong with buying an $80,000 car? Is anything inherently sinful about it? Not really. Will it destroy your financial life? Yes, because you just spent $80,000 on something that's going to lose 50% of its value in 3 years. You just lost $40,000 over the next 3 years, and you expect to win? It's not wrong, but it's not wise. If it's only right or wrong, we can destroy our life. Is there a better mechanism of decision making? And I think there are at least two. One is this temporary or is this permanent? Is this something, am I meeting something, am I meeting a temporary urge in such a way that could have permanent consequences? Am I doing something to temporarily make myself feel better, but in the end, it's going to have permanent consequences? Buying the $80,000 car will help you feel better in that moment. But boy, by 6 months into that payment, and there's 7 years worth of them, you're regretting that. The entire book of Ecclesiastes, which is another wisdom book, can be summed up in this statement. Successful people navigate the tension between depression and melancholy. Let me explain what I mean. Depression is wanting something you don't have. Melancholy is getting what you think you want and it didn't do what you thought it would do. If you want proof of this, go look at your wife's closet, right? They think they want it. It's going to make them feel better, but how many things in your closets still have the price tag on them, right? We think it'll do something. We think that house will make us feel better about ourselves, and then we get it, and then we realize, I'm paying how much for this? I'm paying every month for rooms I never actually walk in so that people I don't actually care about will think I'm richer than I actually am. And this sounded like a good idea. I don't know what. I'm paying how much for this car and it's going down how fast in value? I thought I wanted it, but it didn't do what it actually do. Actually, real life is found in the tension between those things. Real life is embracing the struggle of it, not acting in a way that gives us temporary pleasure in a way that gives us permanent pain or 7-year pain or 30-year pain. It's that, is it temporary, permanent? And maybe the better question is this wise? Not is this right or wrong, but is this the wisest course of action for my life? Is this the wisest way? Is this the wisest thing for me to say? Is this the wisest way for me to spend my money? Is this the wisest thing to do? So the first little checkup I want us to do is decisions. And there's 4 questions here that I'm hoping you take some note of them or something, because when you meet with your groups and you have your journaling, I think it would do our life good if we talk through this. If somebody asked us, hey, did we get caught in the trap of, is this right or wrong? Have we not considered, is this wise or is this permanent or temporary? Now, next slide. So another area that we should is relationships. I think a couple of questions we should ask to make sure that we stay in alignment, and it's not forgiveness, it's freedom. Am I being loving to the permanent people in my life? The people who are permanent in my life, are they getting my best effort? Or am I making the permanent people in my life pay for the sins of the temporary people in my life? Am I making my wife wear the stress that I'm wearing over that client that's a jerk? So come on, now think about this. A client's a jerk. He's temporary. Clients come, clients go, wives stay, right? Children stay. And you come home and you yell at your kids and you make your wife feel bad. And when you're really confronted on it, you're like, you understand, I was just stressed. That client today. Hold on, bro. You just made permanent people in your life pay for the sins of temporary people? That's dumb. That's not wise. It's not even a matter of right or wrong. That's just stupid. The wisdom leader would call that foolish. Like, am I living to be right or free? In your marriage or with your children, you got 2 choices. You could be right or you could be peaceful. You can demand your right to be right. I'm the man of this house, by God. We're going to listen to me. Okay. Listen, if you have to tell people you're in charge, you're not in charge. Right? I'm the head of this house. Okay. You're the head, she's the neck. She's turning you any way she wants, right? Right? You could either exercise your right, or you could have peace in your home. Let's say it this way. Am I open to feedback and coaching from those God has put around me? When's the last time I truly took on some constructive feedback that someone who loved me and was willing to journey with me gave me? When was the last time I did that? When was the last time I did that? I had a meeting. This was not too long ago, actually, with a pastor who loved me, and he wasn't challenging the content of the message. He did challenge my tone of voice when I said it. And I looked at that back, and I realized I'd been speaking. I was just, and somebody had irritated me in the foyer, and that came out. And he's a friend of mine that noticed it. And over coffee, he said, can we bring that to the foot of the cross? Because I know you well enough to know that it's not what you said. It was the tone of voice. That's not you. That's not you. And I thank him for that. I thank him for being courageous enough to have coffee with me and say that. And I'm grateful that in that moment I was open to it. It's not that I would always be open to it. I should always be open to it, and I would endeavor to always be open to it. But in that moment, and when you look back at those moments in your life where you were open to it, you realize everybody is in your life to be your teacher. Everybody. Now, last year I put this question in there, and it's so worth asking again, because if you don't ask this question but once a year, it's probably not enough. So let's ask this question. Next slide. If my daughter married a man like me, would I be excited for her? If my daughter married a man just like me, would I cheer? And if not, why not? Because let me let you know something. She's gonna. And here's the thing. Here's why. She thinks you're normal. Her default button as to what normal is, how a man should treat a woman, comes from her watching you. You don't want to create multi-generational problems just because of an unwillingness to ask the question. If your daughter married someone just like you, would you celebrate or would you mourn? And if you would mourn, what does that mean that you need to change? Let's see. Can my marriage sustain its current level of stress? Let's go to the next one. So decisions, relationship, finances. Finances. Am I living to be right or be free? Like, it's my right. I should drive really nice cars. Yeah, but you're not what you drive. If you want a great read on this, The Millionaire Next Door was a PhD who did a study of real millionaires, and he compared the behaviors of actual millionaires with the perceptions that non-millionaires have about millionaires. And he compared the two. And the biggest chapter in the book was titled this: You Are Not What You Drive. And what he found is that real millionaires on average buy 3-year-old Toyota Camrys, and they sell them by 6-year-old before they start breaking. Real millionaires do that, right? Non-millionaires, thought millionaires buy brand new Mercedes Benzes. They do not. Real millionaires, people trying to look rich, do that. People who are actually rich are not putting their money in depreciating assets. Is it your right to drive what you want? Yeah, drive whatever you want. Is it sinful? Not particularly. Is it wise? That's the question. Is it wise? Do I have financial peace? Am I engaged in undue stress on my marriage and myself because of trying to keep up with things? Am I paying money every month to impress people I really don't like? Let's say it this way. Have I bought something I can't afford with money I don't have to impress people I don't like, and then I'm going to blame Satan for my problems? No, it's you. As the great theologian Pink said, I'm a hazard to myself. Don't let me get me. I'm my own worst enemy. Are my spending habits sustainable? Who can I name that I've consulted with for wealth building? Who is where you want to be financially, and you should pay them and have a cup of coffee with them and say, can you help me with my first step? These are questions we should be asking all the time. Let's go to the next one. So we've done decisions, relationship, finances. How about sex? Everybody perked up. Sex. He said sex. So am I forgiven yet in bondage to lust? Let's say it this way. Am I living to exercise my right in this area or to be free in it? Once again, right or wrong can get us in a lot of trouble when it comes to sexuality, because it's easy to rationalize. Is it necessarily wrong to have coffee with a friend who happens to be a babe? No. Is it wise? No. You play that out, it could cost you everything that's important to you. Are we living to exercise our right? Have I been guilty of objectifying a woman this week? If you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm talking about pornography. And I want you to hear me. I'm not trying to put guilt on any person. I am acknowledging and affirming your worth before God. I'm acknowledging and affirming that God has completely forgiven you and there's nothing between you and him. I'm simply talking about freedom. There is something that is imprisoning, because here's the problem with objectifying people. The problem with objectifying a woman is that objectification of a human being tends to be ubiquitous. It doesn't stay on the computer screen. If you objectify somebody there, you tend to objectify them here and here and here and here and here. And before you know it, everybody around you, including yourself, has become less human. And that is a jail. That is bad. Let's say it this way. Am I meeting legitimate needs in illegitimate ways? Am I meeting legitimate needs? Legitimate needs. That was the first temptation of Jesus. First temptation of Jesus was, you got to be starving. You've had 40 days with no food. Turn that stone into bread. Now, is there anything wrong with turning a stone into bread? No. Would God want someone to be hungry? No. Would God want Jesus to eat? Yes. If Jesus' entire decision-making mechanism was, is this right or wrong? He turns the stone to bread. But that was not the issue. Satan's temptation of Jesus was to not do something inherently evil. Inherent evil is not tempting. It's not. Do something incredibly evil. For most basically good-hearted, basically mentally healthy people, inherent evil is not tempting. It's not. Turn stones to bread, that's tempting. To meet legitimate needs in illegitimate ways is very tempting. That is very tempting. And it's so easy to rationalize. But when we meet legitimate needs in illegitimate ways, it's not the forgiveness that's in question. It's reputation, it's pain, and it's bondage. It's not just forgiveness, it's freedom. Let's go to the next one. So, spiritual. Did you wake up this week saying yes to the infinite possibilities God has for your life? Like in your groups, with your journals, and your prayer times. Maybe that's a question that you should be brave enough to ask somebody. Hey, are you still saying yes? Maybe you should look yourself in the mirror and go, hey, am I still saying yes? This is something that's helped me every Saturday. I go through a ritual in my hotel room. around forgiving everyone that hurt me that week. I try to let it go. I try to let it go for the failures I did that week. I try not to hold the failures against myself for the next week. I try to let theirs go. I try to let my own go. I take a moment and I'm thankful for only what's in my right now. It's about a 30-minute quiet time with God that I try to do every Saturday before Sunday starts, where I forgive everyone that hurt me. I ask God to forgive me for the places that I failed, and I try to feel that thing let go. I take a few minutes, and I'm thankful for only what's in my right now. I essentially say, God, if you never did one more thing for me, if this was my life, I thank you for it. I try to show gratitude for only what is in my right now. These things, and then in one question I ask, I look in the mirror and I say, will you still say yes this week? This week, will you say yes to the infinite possibilities Jesus has for your life? And I'm not saying it's right to do this ritual, and I'm not saying it's wrong to do this ritual. It's just a ritual is only as good as the function it's carrying. For me, it reminds me and it recenters me on, wait a minute, there's a bigger thing going on this week than whatever you're trying to rationalize here. It really helps. Are we saying yes to the infinite possibilities God has for our life? 2, what are we excusing today that we'll regret tomorrow? Is there anything we're excusing now that tomorrow we'll look back and go, yeah, I shouldn't have excused that? Once we feel the pain of it, is it wrong? Not really, but man, there's a lot of pain in something that's not so wrong. What are we excusing today that we will regret tomorrow? Let's say it this way. Who is regularly speaking into my life? Is there a sharpening dynamic to me? If I open my life to other people's feedback, everybody is our teacher. Everybody. I was just in a place called Gundawindi, and it was 47. And man, and I got to tell you, the pastors out there, flipping legends, man. They sold 20,000 acres to go pastor a church with 4 people in it, and now they've got 100 and something, and they've got a Christian school, and I thought to myself, man, and he was very, very kind to me, but I tell you, and he told me, he said, I learned a lot from you. He said, that's why I wanted to have you out here. I've just learned a lot from you. I've listened to lots of your stuff. And I said, thank you. But you know, when I was there, I learned more from him than he learned from me. I tried to pick up grit. That man's got grit. To sell everything and go pastor 4 people in Gundawindi thinking there's infinite possibilities. Flip that, it's grit. That's a level of grit I am unfamiliar with. And I thought, I want some of that grit. Man, I want some of that grit. Man, that determination, that stick-to-itiveness. That is just, I was very, very blessed by Gundawindi. And I'd never been there before. All I could think of was, please get me into an aircon. And he's like, he's not bothered by the thing. I stayed at his house, and the board, this is all language I don't even know anything about. I'm a city boy. He says, my bore is clogged up. And I'm like, does that mean the toilet won't flush? Because that could be embarrassing, right? And so the next morning, he's out there fixing his bore. And I'm like, this man is a man, you know. I looked at his hands. They're huge, you know, like he was a normal-sized man, but his hands are huge, you know. All I could think of was, man, I'm so glad you're not my proctologist. That would be awful. Good grief. This will only hurt for a second, but you'll remember it for a lifetime, by God. The freest life is seeing how everybody has something to teach you. Instead of being closed off to somebody that's just a bit different. Let's say it this way. Next slide. When is the last time we seriously and authentically sought the presence of God? Or has the urgent things in our life kept us from being fully present in seeking God? It's things that will change our life. Let's say it this way. Whose life is going to be better this week because we're in it? Is there anyone whose life is going to be better this week because we're in it? And we're going to intentionally make their life better. Now, if you're the type that listens to the first 5 minutes of something, and the last 5 minutes of something, and you sort of phase out in the middle, come back. Here we go. Let me summarize the entire teaching in a few statements. Ready? Here we go. Our best life doesn't come from forgiveness alone, but also freedom. Our best life does not come from forgiveness alone. We embrace forgiveness, and the leaders of New Hope would say, please, we want you to embrace that. But that's just one part of your journey, and it's almost entirely God's responsibility. Our responsibility is to journey together, to lead to the infinite possibilities of our life, and to be free, Freedom comes from making choices that are consumed with permanence and wisdom instead of right and wrong. Permanence and wisdom. Is this temporary or permanent, and is this wise? Are much better questions when you're making decisions than is this right or is this wrong? Number 3, regular and intentional courageous conversations are necessary for freedom. So if you're not a part of a discipleship group, a life group, a place where they do this the best tier of any place in the world, where you sit with a group of people who are willing to journey with you relationally, and you have your journal, and you talk about what God's doing in your life, and you challenge. If we're not having intentional, regular, courageous conversations, there's a bit of freedom missing. Is forgiveness missing? No. Is freedom missing? Yes. It's not being maximized. Next slide. Next slide. The goal is not exercising our rights financially, sexually, and spiritually, rather to be free and full of peace. Real living is found in centering our lives around Christ and other people. Real freedom is my life is centered on Christ, and then Christ centers my life on meeting other people's needs. How can I journey with those people? How can I promote them? How can I make their life better? Real living is a life centered around Christ. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus, I want you to know that when you walked in the room today, there was nothing between you and God. God loved you before the foundation of the world. He showed you that he loved you, and that while you were still wherever you are, he died for you. The question isn't, is there something between you and God? The question is, would you take that one step forward and embrace that okayness with God that Jesus is offering? Would you be reconciled? Would you, and maybe you're here and you've made that decision before, but you're sort of going through the motions. I would encourage you to take one more step and say, you know what, I'm gonna plug in. I'm gonna be a part. I'm gonna be a part of community. If for no other reason, that lady at Stanford said, I'll live longer. I'm gonna do that. I wanna engage in courageous conversations for myself and for other people. I wanna be a part of the culture that New Hope is created here. I bless you, my brothers, to be people who aren't just forgiven, but people who live the best life every single day. Not just forgiven, but free, full of peace, saying yes to the infinite possibilities God has for your life every day. I bless you to know that there's still, if you woke up drawing breath today, there's still infinite possibilities for you to partner with the risen Christ to bring heaven to every place we see hell here. I bless you to be people who live in that moment every single day. I'm so looking forward to being with you as a part of the weekend. As always, all of our resources are set up out there. The reason we do that is because that's the way we finance our justice projects. 100% of everything we make, we give, at this time of year, we give to orphanages in China that look after mentally handicapped kids, because we don't want to just sit around waiting to go to heaven. We want to make mentally handicapped children in China's life better. We want to feed, clothe, shelter, and educate them. Since the last time I was here, we've released 4 brand new series. I'll never be the guest speaker that only has one thing to say. I can't cope. I've always got to be writing something new. And so you could come out and check those things out and know that you're being a part of making somebody else's life better. Over the course of the weekend, my prayer for us, and let's just actually stop and pray right now. Lord, over the course of this weekend, we open our heart, we open our stomach, we open our inner being, and say, Lord, would you transform me? Even if it's 1 degree, would you move my life to a little bit more of what it looks like to live free, full of peace, and in the dynamic flow of God? Amen. Amen. Until I see you again next time, grace and peace, everybody. God bless.
Come on, let's give it up.